Analysis in Chains with Nathan Williams and Neil Kieran.
Welcome to Analysis in Chains, brought to you by CryptoNews.com, your daily source of all things crypto. I'm Nathan Williams, and I'm here with my good friend Felipe Stark, the CTO of Gust.network. And
hi, Nathan.
Nice to have you here, Felipe. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about what Felipe is doing, and then we'll have a bit more of a general conversation about all things crypto that we've experienced in our short time going through this amazing space. So, Felipe, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just a quick remark. I really loved your intro. It's amazing.
Everybody needs theme music.
Everybody needs it.
I always said that if I were a superhero, what the superpower I would want is to be able to conjure up music, theme music wherever I go. And that was what I said when I was a kid, and that was before sort of, cell phones with music were like a popular thing. So
I'm totally talking to my co-founder Dennis about inserting theme musics whenever we do a pitch now. I think that could really lighten up things to the investors in a way, and probably the way you did it, a little bit of techno, but not too much.
I was thinking that every time I do a phone call, hello, this is Nathan.
Actually, that does make sense. We should definitely think about that. We change it when we work together at Subvise. Most people maybe do not know that, but we did have a phone ring whenever an investor called. Do you remember that?
That's right. So
that was awesome.
Felipe and I worked together at a startup before. This is how I know him. And yeah, beforehand, we had a special ring for the investors, so we would always know if it was an important call.
Yeah, that worked pretty well.
Yeah. So Felipe, Gust.network. It is recruitment on the blockchain. Tell me, what is Gust.network in your own words?
Well, first of all, we need to state a couple of things. We are changing the world here. And I think that everybody needs to know that. Just like any ICO project, any blockchain project, we are changing the world. And Gust.network is a new infrastructure for HR, which means that all users are on blockchain, but they do have full control of the data, and companies do not need a new intermediary, like LinkedIn. They can access and contact users anyways. I'm sorry, with direct contact. And what's interesting about is that looking for a job, even if you are on demand or if you're not in demand, is a hustle. It's like we're stuck in the 1970s and it just moved to a web page. And I think that even with all the smart things that we see there, AI, everything is still a little bit stuck. It is still a hustle. It's not automated anyways, and the whole companies, they go crazy about it. The HR department, instead of adding value where they should be adding, which is building a community, they're adding value, not adding value, but just screening CVs and checking out skills and being biased by it. And what we want to do is total control of the data for the users, empowering. I know this word is also just like changing the world, but it is true by us. And
okay. Rule number 1, don't use the word changing the world.
Okay, and empowering is also on the list.
Empowering, that's just,
okay.
No, banned.
Banned. I'll
okay, but tell me, so essentially what's the difference between this and just a recruitment firm?
The difference is there are no intermediaries, and people are really on control. They are the ones who decide which companies they want to talk to, and they put a price tag on their data as
okay,
well.
So I'm a user. I go to Gust.network and I sign up. What do I do?
You sign up at us, and you put your whole information, and everything goes automatically since we have partners. So it's not like we're building one solution, we're creating only the infrastructure. And partners can dock into our infrastructure, and this way you have multiple at once. So you sign up just once, and then you have diverse D apps which are going to offer you jobs, or maybe in a specific way of, okay, how should I proceed with my career? And that could be also a D app, or oh, I'm looking for a change now, and then you receive automatically then jobs that you specify. I want to work for a company with at least 200 people on this kind of on this industry and doing this kind of job. So in a way, it's everything automated, but we are enabling partners to join our infrastructure.
When you say infrastructure, I think this is sort of a new business model and a new thing that people, I've talked to people about this, and it's something that blockchain sort of enables, but it's hard to wrap your mind around. In your eye, or in your mind, what is infrastructure?
Infrastructure is basically, okay, it's not the best technical term, but it would be like an open API for other companies. I think that's the best way to describe it right now, so people can understand it. Whenever you have a solution itself, you can have an API, you can open it, but usually you retain the most critical part of your API because it's your business. And an infrastructure is all about giving freedom to everybody, not only to the users, but also to the partners who wants to join us.
So you're not running a business?
We are running a business.
You are running a business?
We are running a blockchain business.
What is your blockchain business?
It's an infrastructure.
Is it? Okay. So I think you got to clarify that a little bit.
Our business is a feeless model, a feeless blockchain model, and the only thing that it's a foundation. So it's basically what Ethereum did, and well, I think that the most classical example ever is the Linux Foundation. So you open source some kind of service, and that's what we're doing. We create an infrastructure, an HR infrastructure, a service for companies and for users. And it's not monetized the way VC capital-backed companies usually work. So it's all about tokens, and all about no fees on your foundation. Now,
of the people here, because we've got an audience here of, I want to say about 10,000, maybe 15,000 people.
Yeah, definitely you got that right.
It's about 15,000.
Counting.
And I'm wondering, of these people, how many, by a show of hands, know what a D app is? I'd say that's about half. Okay, so maybe like you can explain, what's the difference between a D app and a regular app?
Okay, so for the 7,500 people here who do not know what a D app is a decentralized application. So it's just like an application, but runs on the blockchain. It's quite simple.
Okay, so the thing is, you're building an infrastructure, it's feeless.
Yes.
How is it monetized?
Tokens.
How are the token? What's the token economy like? How does this work?
The token economy, it's just like pure 100% blockchain. Tokens have a limit amount, so they cannot be created. They have a limit amount. Once you have a limit amount of tokens, the whole community, once it gets bigger, then it runs on supply and demand. If you have much more demand than the supply, the price of the token goes higher. The service itself, it remains the same price. So it's cheap, but the token goes higher. And the foundation itself, it has then a reserve on tokens. So the foundation gains money when the ecosystem grows. That's how we run a blockchain foundation feeless business.
Okay, fair enough. So essentially what you're, to recap what I understand of it, and you can correct me when I'm wrong,
sure,
is that I as a user would basically create my CV, upload it to this feeless infrastructure using one of the D apps. Maybe it's by run by a certain company.
Do you know what you want to do with your life already? Your career? Or
I want to be a blockchain guy.
Do you need a job right now?
No.
Okay, so you're not looking actively for a job.
Well,
let's put another person, because you know exactly what you're gonna do with your life, and you're not looking for a job, Nate.
Okay, so that person over there, in the middle of the 15,000 people that are here, he's waving his hands, and he wants to be an airline pilot.
Airline pilot. Actually, that's a very interesting. That's a very interesting business, because the airline pilots are very on demand, and people are not aware of that. So let's suppose that's a very good example.
Wow, I guessed right.
You always guess right. You know that, Nathan. You're amazing at it.
Yeah.
And so let's suppose, for example, you are a pilot, and you are a lazy pilot, which is not a very good combination if you think about it, but okay. And and then you put your CV in our infrastructure, and yes, you're okay with the job that you have. For example, you're based in Indonesia and you're flying locally, but what you're not aware is that, for example, another company, let's suppose Qatar, is desperate looking for pilots. And instead of going through all those job boards and trying to check out, okay, jobs for pilots or companies who are hiring for pilots, once you upload your information in our infrastructure, then the companies, the airlines, they are going to look for you, find you out, and see, okay, this guy could be awesome, could be an awesome pilot, let's get in touch with him. And right now, the only way that they do it, the only way that they can do it in reaching people is through LinkedIn, in a way. And that's a little bit complicated, because LinkedIn is an intermediary. And with blockchain, then we eliminate that. People can contact other people directly. So as a pilot, you receive then other job positions that you might not be aware. And as a pilot, you're always flexible. You can always move around. It's not like you do home office.
Okay, but maybe there's got to be like specialized recruitment agencies, right? So, you know, like, are you just another recruitment agency for these?
We are not a recruitment agencies, but we are an infrastructure that enables recruitment agencies to do their job better. Because there are specialized recruitment agencies, but okay, how many applicants do they have? And it is extremely hard to keep. That's one of the most difficult things, is to keep their CVs updated. So maybe they do have 2,000, 3,000 pilots, but they do not know their latest achievements. They do not know how many extra hours of flight they actually did. They do not know if they are only, for example, 3 years ago, the guy was only able to fly Airbus, but right now he changed jobs and now he can fly Boeing as well. And they do not know that. So it is specialized. There is this market there, but updating the information is extremely hard. What we do is we centralize that in a way that decentralizes the whole information for recruitment agencies to have updated information.
Before we move on, because I want to ask you about this whole reason behind the choice of decentralization and the feeless infrastructure. I think it's really interesting. But before we move on to that,
sure.
You know, I'm glad that we were able to sort of get an overview of your project and what you're doing. I'm wondering if there's any questions from the audience before we move on.
I think that the 15,000 people are really shy here.
People. There's a microphone right in front of you.
Hello? Okay. So you said recruitment agencies can use your infrastructure, but could I, as an active job seeker, go and use this as well?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. But what would I go to? Like, what website or?
Well, that's the thing. It's on blockchain. So in a way, we enable other people and other companies to do also a sign up for us. Mm-hmm. We are going to provide a sign up as a basic one, but for example, it can be that the sign up that you do, it goes through another company. So for example, you can go to Gust.network and sign up directly, mm-hmm. but it can be that it's another company doing that. It's a little bit different than the usual model that you see that. It's an infrastructure. So it's like we're providing the whole back end, and other companies can work on the front end if they wish.
Yeah.
We are also going to provide some front end so that we can attract users and they can use the platform in a way. But our for the long run, it's all about partnerships. It's all about companies who want to have a larger pool of users and companies who want to have direct access without intermediaries.
But so the agencies are responsible for supplying the database of candidates who are job seekers, or do you have a pool of candidates? Or
it's about partnerships.
So
it's
in
a way, that was a concern that we had at the beginning. But then when we started talking with HR partners, I would say 20% would say no, it's my data and we're not going to provide it. But in a way, it's like, okay, everybody's on LinkedIn anyway, so what's actually your secret sauce? You don't have anything. You have 20,000 people who are actually probably not updated. And what we're doing then is, okay, you can use our infrastructure, you can bring your users to us, but by doing that, you're collaborating with other agencies as well, and you have access to a larger pool. So it's a win-win to everybody. The real thing is HR agencies, what they have is the customers. What they have is their clients, and that's something that we're not touching.
And will you be affected by the data law in Germany?
I'm sorry?
Will you be affected by the data law?
We go beyond the data law.
What does that mean?
That means that our whole infrastructure not only guarantees that the user has full control of the data, but also the whole data law is in a way set up with us that it goes beyond. Users have truly full control, not companies.
Are you storing data on the blockchain?
We're not storing users' data on the blockchain. We're using blockchain for the smart contract and the infrastructure. So users, they can do, they own their data.
I think this is going in the direction what I want to ask you. I have two questions. First is, if I have lots of personal data, and how does this be introduced, or how is this introduced into your system? And how do I control that I'm not spammed? I mean, I have control about my data, so I have to decide who is getting my data, I think. I don't want that everybody is reading my CV. I don't want to be spammed with lots of offers of things that I'm not interested in. So I have to control who can read something and who is not allowed to read something, and whose smart contract is applying to my CV and which one is not applying to it. And how do you handle these details? I mean, I think that it's becoming more complicated.
That was one of the first problems that we came across, and the way we solved is the user has full control to say, okay, those companies can get in touch with me, and that's a real problem, because right now on LinkedIn, if you're a developer, you get so many requests from people that you do not want, and always like advertising and saying, hey, do you want this kind of job? Do you want that kind of job? And that's a real issue. So what we did is you can set up exactly which kind of companies do you want to be contact for, and since we're not storing your data on the blockchain, then you do have full access. It's not like people can access your data. That's not possible. And in a way, what also blockchain does, and that's a huge advantage, and what our infrastructure does, is the anonymity. And once you are anonymous on the blockchain, we also reduce any kind of bias, at least on the first level of recruitment. And that's a huge win for companies.
Okay, I think I understand it, but let's say I adopt my smart contract in a way that I tell them, okay, my age can be published to certain companies, my interests are published to certain companies, and so in the end, if I'm looking for a job, I must publish a lot of things to certain companies, And I have no guarantee that, for example, they use this data again and spread it. I mean, they may use your system to collect as much data as possible because they profile things which fits to everybody who's online or who's in your chain, collect as much data as they can collect with intelligent profiling of my smart contracts, and having several of them which fit to everybody, and then collect all the data.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I don't mean to interrupt there, Felipe, but I'm just curious. Would it, Volker, would that be different if the chain just connected people to sell their own data versus if the data was visible on chain?
No, I think this is, I mean, when you have LinkedIn, it's the same problem. I mean, you can publish it.
Well, LinkedIn is sort of like a publishing thing, right? But like, let's say like, is the phone company responsible if I send or the post office responsible if I send my CV by the post, and then the company ends up keeping it? And
yeah,
then
it depends on. I mean, in this case, it's up to me to agree on what I give, what I offer to others.
Yeah.
My understanding is that this is done by a DApp or by a smart contract, where I can tell the contract, okay, do this and do that. Offer this kind of information to those people and something else to others. And so I have full control, of course. But if I'm looking for a job, I'm keen on publishing as much as possible to get as much offers. But if I'm somebody who's looking for people who are looking for a job, I can simply make lots of different kind of profiles that I'm looking for to collect as much offers which are in your system, and then do whatever with these information, with these details. So
yeah, but you still allowed it. It's not the smart contract. No, that's the question. The smart contract is not saying you always need to allow those companies to see your full CV. You're giving the okay.
Yes, exactly. So it's not different to what's going on now. I mean, I have to, for example, allow somebody on my LinkedIn profile to see my profile in full.
No, that's not true.
Okay, maybe I.
That's not true, because your LinkedIn profile is actually online and it's available. So anyone can see your profile and know who you are. They can't contact you, but everybody can actually gather your information.
Okay, and
without your approval.
But in your system, I have also to decide who can contact me and who's not allowed to contact me.
Yeah, but that's not what LinkedIn does. Because
okay.
everyone has access. What we do is only the people that you say, yeah, those people are allowed to see my data, then they will get the information.
Okay.
I want to bring it back now to the second topic that I wanted to talk about. And the reason I actually invited Felipe here, you know, the thing is, I've been running analysis and chains and for the better part of a year, and I've been running the Blockchain Unpacked meetup once a month since last December, and we've had some really advanced and later stage startups here. And Felipe is interesting because even though he's in the early stage, we've had some really interesting conversations about the design choices that he's had and some of the challenges of tech. And one of the things was this idea of feeless infrastructure being sort of the future. That if you've got a blockchain company that's charging a fee, then in a way you've got a centralized entity, and it's going to end up creating its own competition in a sense. Whereas really the disruptive nature of blockchain is when you have this feeless infrastructure, and it completely changed the way that I thought about my project. For those of you who know, MindSpider is the project that I'm working on most of the time, and so it was very influential to me. And so with Felipe, I wanted to have sort of your opinion on how you came to this conclusion of this idea of feeless infrastructure being the future.
Yeah, I think that whenever you look at most blockchain projects, there are, I would say, three kinds of projects. So one kind that it's only about the token, and you offer a service, and then you exchange tokens. So if you change the tokens for fiat currencies, you see little difference. And then you have a
like a payment.
Like a payment, yeah. Exactly. And the second type that we often see is there are some integration with smart contracts, and there are some functionalities on the blockchain, but you do offer a full service. So you do not offer an infrastructure, you do not offer feeless, you always feeless project, you always have some kind of fee in order to maintain it. And then there is the third way, and it is basically Ethereum, EOS, and other platforms for blockchain, which is they are feeless. If you think about it, they're nothing less than infrastructures as well. And that's why we started to think about it. It's the next step. Is going toward truly decentralization when you do not have a fee and you build only the infrastructure so that other people can use it and other people can just join the whole community.
The way that I've described it when I talk about my project is sort of like the internet. That there's no one charging a fee for the internet, but that people just sort of plug in apps that use it and then can make their own business on it.
Yes.
But it's sort of different in that you have a token model that makes the whole thing work, and you do need to somehow incentivize people to participate in the infrastructure, and it's not always easy to do that.
Yeah, I don't think that the internet is totally free as most people think, and in a way it does run on fiat currencies. Anyways,
in a way,
okay.
Crypto wasn't invented in 1992.
Yeah, and it's not what I think the magic that blockchain brings, and that's why it's so amazing, is that it is what the internet should be. It is a true decentralization. It is a peer-to-peer communication. And what we see on the internet right now is that everything is locked up on silos. You have cloud solutions, you have service solutions everywhere, but it's not decentralized. It's not, you're always logging into someone's server in a way. You're not talking directly. I'm not talking to you directly, Nathan. I'm talking with another server in Iceland or Frankfurt or whatever, and then talking to you. And what blockchain does is exactly that. It's changing that. I'm talking to you directly.
Okay. But it's an important question. Do people care? I heard someone at a meetup at one point that it stuck with me like a splinter in my mind, which was people don't actually care about decentralization. What they care about is well-managed and well-governed infrastructure. That these systems are managed professionally. Like, they don't want to know as long as it works well. And do you think that that's going to be like a real hindrance for this decentralization movement? Is it going to stay in sort of like a fringe group or not?
No, I truly do not believe that. I think that we are moving towards much more mature blockchain solutions, and that's going to be amazing in the next months and years. Is going to be a truly change, and that is an interesting question. If people will care, because what they want is just a reliable service. At the same time, I think that blockchain brings more reliability to the system, because then it's decentralized. You're not going to be dependable on one company, and everything's going to be about the product, because anyone can buid then a D app and make a better product. And if your product is not good enough, people can change. Well, I'm not going to cite names here, but for big corporations, they use software which was invented in the 80s and 90s, and it sucks, but they do keep using it just because they started using it. And and in the near future, then that's going to change because it's going to be all about the product and the value you bring, and not about who was there first.
I don't know. From my point of view, I'm a little more cynical, I think. Like, I think there's enough garbage projects out there on blockchain that...
That's not true, Nathan. Just kidding.
Yeah. There are plenty of garbage projects out there. I think that there are some amazing ones.
At the beginning of the internet, it was only great projects,
sure,
right?
Yeah. No.
Awesome projects only.
I'm just saying that because there are garbage projects that, the average person doesn't have time to sort of sift through them. What they're going to go with is sort of what you say, the best managed service or the best service, or the one that wins for whatever reason. And I think the real innovation that blockchain brings that is probably the only thing that will make it break into the mainstream is not decentralization. It's not the fact that no one company is in charge. That might help a little bit in the era of Facebook and Equifax hacks where people are afraid, but that won't last. What lasts is this idea of changing incentives, of I can get paid for doing exercise challenges, or I can get paid for applying for jobs, or I can get paid for providing certain data to a decentralized system in some way. It changes the game a little bit, just enough, I think, to cross over to the mainstream.
Yeah, what I think it's going to happen is that it's really going to be about product. It's and that's the biggest change, in my opinion, that it's going to be about quality of product and not just who was there first. And I have an amazing example, and that was and actually that's everywhere. You see so many good products on the market, but they do not have enough resources on marketing to make it viable and to gather people. And when I was studying in college, electrical engineer, there were two main computer programs which were amazing for mathematics and engineering. And one was MATLAB, and the other one was Mathematica. And we all know MATLAB. Nobody knows about Mathematica. And Mathematica was a way better product at that time. And the thing is, everybody said MATLAB was better in business, but Mathematica was a better product. And I think that's a game changer in blockchain. It's all going to change to the better product and not to who has the better marketing or who is more aggressive. That's my opinion.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I guess we'll find out. I still think that better marketing wins the day, because this is such an arcane sphere. It's very hard to understand blockchain, and there's a lot of hype around it now, but very few people really take the time to read the white papers before investing, take the time to look, is this really decentralized, or is someone just pocketing all the money? It's hard to know. Yeah,
I think that the first thing you should look into a white paper is the word fee. So just do a quick search, fee. Maybe that's a sign.
Okay. So I'm going to throw out something else, because I've been thinking about this a lot. It's one thing, like your project aside. Okay, so your project is sort of it's got a very specific use case. It's a very interesting project, but when I'm looking at other infrastructures that might require more governance, like international compliance is what I am working on with big companies, right?
Sure.
And one of the questions that I have is, if you eliminate the fee at the smart contract level, at the infrastructure level, but you have decentralized governance, and they maintain a list of good or trusted apps, D-apps, that can use the system. Anyone can make a system that's used, but but if you're not on the good list, then maybe no one will trust you. And then they impose a fee on the good list D-apps. Is it not the same amount of centralization, or how do you make sure that it's still decentralized?
Yeah, I would say it's the same amount of decentralization.
Same amount of
centralization. Sorry.
I mean, a little
bit, because at the end, then you are controlling what people are allowed to use or not in a way. It's not like you're controlling, but it's a little bit like Inception.
I think, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot, because I'm not sure that, like, with these international projects, you can totally get away from trust, and it's an interesting problem. But I'm wondering if you see something like that with something like Gust, like if you have, like how is the system going to be governed? Is it just going to be sort of left to the wind, or have you thought about that?
No. It's going to be a foundation.
Going to be a foundation?
It's going to be a foundation. And there are a couple of things that, it's the same question, how does IOTA works? How does Ethereum works? And EOS works? And the foundation, then, there are a couple of types of foundations. I think that one of the most interesting ones right now is IOTA. What they did was a hybrid solution. So they do not only live on the interests of the money that they gather, but also they have one part that is invested totally on making sure and on the future of the foundation, and then another part which they get interest in order to make improvements to the network in the near future. And there is another thing that is very interesting, is how Linux Foundation works. And Linux Foundation, what they do is they have memberships. So companies, they pay an amount of a membership card for the year, and with that money, then the Linux Foundation make improvements for the projects. And that is a model. That is a model as well. Because at the end, for example, Microsoft is one of the platinum members of Linux Foundation. So that's quite interesting.
I wonder about the future of a DAO. You know, like what if you had a decentralized autonomous organization? You know, like they've tried it a little bit. It didn't go so well. It would be amazing, but
it would be amazing.
The question is, what would it be vulnerable to?
Yeah, I think whenever you have full decentralization, there are. Yeah, I don't know, Nathan. I think that whenever you bring it to the masses and whenever you have a community, usually tends to have better products and better governance, because more people thinking about that usually brings better ideas. So that's my opinion.
All right, well, let's open it the second part to questions. If anyone has any questions specifically about decentralization, what do you think? Should decentralization be the future?
I would like to hear from the other 7,500 people here, maybe.
Yeah,
on the other side.
Yeah, maybe one central question is that even if it's decentral, you have to have some governance, I think. I mean, otherwise it's fully running out of control, that if anybody is using it or abusing it, having ways to, for example, by, as I mentioned at the beginning, having ways to control or to program certain D-apps which abuse your system or start to spam something, you may want to block this, and you may want to have somebody who says, okay, this is not correct, or you have something where you divide the good between the bad, or whatever. I think it has to be tested yet. What is how much decentral I'll say it, systems you can run without any kind of control. I mean, in the end, also the contract, the smart contract or the D-app is some kind of control, because it has to be adopted to something where you define what can adopt and what not. But somebody has to define it. In the end, it's the IT guy who defines it. But it's not open for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, from my point of view, when you're talking about the power of blockchain and sort of decentralization, you're talking about shifting power as opposed to eliminating it. And it's an interesting question. Like if you have a DAO, like where people get a stake and a vote based on the tokens they hold, then the richest people maybe get a better voice. Or if you have or if you just set the cap at 1 vote per account, then the rich people still get a better voice because they just make multiple accounts. Or you know, I mean, there are ways of gaming every system, and I think this is going to be an arms race going forward of trying to figure out how can you make it fair as opposed to how to make it decentral, maybe.
I think what we have to consider is that there are not only a few people but thousands of people who give a vote on something and who can direct something in a certain direction. Like the nodes, for example, it's always the question, you have thousands of nodes and they decide something because of majority in the end. They can give something a direction. And it's not in the hand of a few people. It's not so easy to corrupt it because it costs a lot of energy or money or whatever, or influence, because of the masses you have to handle then. And I think this is a very interesting point that you have to consider, that the more you spread something, the more people can influence it, the lower is the individual influence, but in the masses then give it a direction, which must not mean that the masses always are correct and that they are the best way to decide, but at least it's common sense then.
Well, interestingly, it's sort of like information asymmetry is a problem. You know, the core theory, and correct me if I'm wrong, Felipe, but I think the core theory behind the idea of a decentral system is that more people will, if you have a larger group of people, then they'll make a better decision than maybe one person at the center, which is one point of failure, one person that can be bribed or corrupted or whatever. But the problem is that if you have something like propaganda, then maybe you do still have a single point of influence where one media company or one propaganda outlet is influencing the majority of people that don't have the same information but still have the same vote. And this is what you see happening in places like Bitcoin. I mean, they call it FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, that gets spread because not everyone who holds the coins or whatever has the same information as everybody else, and so you have forks happening, and it's going to be a challenge, because it's something that people have never faced before.
So yes, thank you, Volker. That was a good question. I like to build off of it in my kind of question and little spiel. So I think this brings up an interesting question of, you know, what you're talking about, Felipe, is really kind of direct democracy, right? Or this idea that, you know, every stakeholder in the system should have a voice. And my question to both of you is, are there certain systems, certain pieces of infrastructure that maybe we wouldn't want the average person, including, you know, ourselves, to have a vote in? That they're so complicated that in order to be able to govern them effectively and correctly, you need to have specialized education and knowledge that's only built up over time. And therefore, we'd want to create some kind of gate to only let in those people who maybe have this expertise.
Yeah, I think that maybe we should defer what is a voice and in blockchain. A voice is not like fake news in Facebook. It's not like you put in your idea and that's it. When we're talking about blockchain, it's more on a consensus. So it's a little bit,
right, but sorry to interrupt, but that's exactly what I'm saying, is that, you know, if we asked everyone to vote directly on taxes, we'd probably all vote. You know, there's this tragedy of the commons issue, and there are a lot of other issues, and you know, that's like Econ 101. But there are lots of much more advanced economics issues that we get in when we are kind of distributing the allocation of scarce resources to the crowd.
Yeah, you're correct. That is something that it is a concern, and I think that most people working with blockchain, they are aware of that. What also people believe, and I think that's the nature of things, is that whenever more people joins blockchain and more people joins the community, then it tends to be stabilized. So when you create a larger pool of voices, it tends to stabilize it than only to create homogeneous kinds of minds. So if you create a true heterogeneous kind of minds and a larger one, we might be on the right way to stabilize any kind of consensus that we have on blockchain.
I'd like to just point out that one of the things about the sort of possibility of direct control or direct democracy in blockchain governance, it's almost like a problem for tomorrow blockchain as opposed to today blockchain, because blockchain isn't even understandable by the majority of people. It's like it almost has like this self-limiting gate of not like you have to know and educate yourself a certain amount just to buy the coins, let alone be able to vote or to make a fork or to participate in the community and be trusted or any of these things. So, and theoretically, just by getting that information, you've inoculated yourself a little bit against sort of the fear, uncertainty, doubt that comes in. Now, it doesn't mean that the community is immune to it, not by any means. I mean, you still see a lot of it, especially because as the prices of crypto go up, more and more people come in and that really don't know what they're doing, except they don't want to miss out. But still, I think in terms of people investing enough to have some sort of say over governance, I think we're actually a little ways off from it being a major problem of like the uneducated governor. Maybe a couple of years, but I do see it being a problem going forward, especially as these blockchain systems become more user friendly and it becomes easier to participate.
Yes.
Could you just say that again into the microphone?
Could you explain once more what you mean exactly with the feeless characteristic of the model you propose?
Yeah, we're not talking about what you said. Sorry, feeless transactions. So, the fees for the transactions are still there, but there are models which they provide a service and then they require a fee. For example, I don't know. You have a solution in blockchain to sell houses. So for each house that you sell, the smart contract or the solution get 1% fee. That's not what we're doing. Then we do not have those kinds of fees in our infrastructure.
Okay, so you mean basically there's no centralized entity that always gets a certain fee in whatever transaction?
Exactly, exactly. The transactions, transaction fees, then it depends on the blockchain architecture that you're using. For example, Ethereum or EOS, that's a feeless system that is coming up, or Lisk and the other ones. That's a different thing.
Sure, thanks. In your model, I mean, I wasn't there from the beginning, so sorry if I missed that, but
sure.
It feels like there's an infrastructure to be built up. What's kind of how is the incentivation or the incentive system be set up so to make sure that the infrastructure is really built in a good and nice way?
We monetize your data. So you're in control of your data and you can sell your data, your professional data. That's the way we tokenize it.
And who buys it?
Companies buy it.
So basically you get paid for applying for a job.
Yeah, pretty much that.
What stops me from applying for 100 million jobs?
Well, you could do that, but applying for a job generates a transaction. So if you apply for 1 million jobs, then that would be that's on the blockchain.
So I'd get caught eventually.
Well, the apps will be able to manage that. In a way, you will get caught.
Okay, so we're at 8 o'clock. We have time maybe for one more question, and then we'll wrap up. We can have a beer, network for a bit, and then take off and enjoy the rest of our nice May evening. Does anyone have a last question for Felipe?
Or for Nathan?
Yes.
So you are talking your project Gust.network is a feederless protocol. And what is exactly token model? So any use case of your tokens?
Yeah, that's what we just answered.
Yeah.
Or I didn't understand. Maybe the question is a little bit different. It's like you get paid for your private data, for your CV information. So companies who wants to have you on board and wants to talk to you, you will receive tokens for that.
I've got another question.
Yeah, sure.
You spoke about a foundation.
Yes.
And I think the foundation at the beginning has to have some funds and has to make sure that there's a certain future income to run the foundation, and not without spending the funds you have at the very beginning. Otherwise, you run out of money sooner or later. Usually you do it, for example, you have a certain amount of money and you get interest on that. That means in fiat currency you can go to a bank and get interest on this. But with crypto tokens, this is maybe difficult to get interest.
No, that's exactly how Ethereum and IOTA works. They are also a foundation, and they do get it's the same process. So
maybe you can outline it a bit more to understand it. I think you can't go to a bank and tell them, okay, I have a certain amount of tokens, and I want to have cash to pay my employees.
Yeah, usually how it works on any blockchain project, you do have a token sale, which is how you receive the funds at first. And with those funds, then you're able to develop the project, and also in a foundation project, you reserve then, at least IOTA is this hybrid foundation. Ethereum was the full amount that they received, they would get interest on it. But on IOTA, then it's a hybrid one. Half of the funds then they would use for developing the project, and the other half they would get interest on keeping the foundation working in the future. And that's the idea that we have right now, how it's going to be funded.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. We can hang out here for a bit longer. Thank you very much, Felipe. Let's give him a hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Our 15,000 people clapping. All right. So we'll come back in June for the next one. We don't have a date set yet, but check out meetup.com and tune into the podcast at analysisinchains.com.
And Gust.network.
And Gust.network. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.